Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show, where we have the discussions that inform, entertain, and empower educators to be the change. I am your host, Dr. Will, and I am here today with Elissa Frazier. How are you doing, Elissa?
I'm great, Dr. Will. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, thank you for being a guest. Today, people, the title of our show is If You Blend It, They Will Come. We will be talking about blended learning. I wanted Elissa to be on the show. We are in a group, a teacherpreneur chat on Voxer, and in there we encourage each other to push forward with our dreams. And I know Elissa is doing great work with her teachers, and so I wanted to bring her on to share her expertise. So for those who are watching, will you please introduce yourself, Elissa?
Sure. So my name is Elissa Frazier, and I live in Chicago, and I am currently a literacy coach in one of the suburbs of Chicago, the western suburbs of Chicago. And I am passionate about literacy and technology and also advocacy for diverse learners. I have two autistic sons, and I'm kind of in this place right now because about 3 years ago, I began using technology in a meaningful way. And so what that means is that I came from a school where we had 100% free and reduced lunch, predominantly African-American and Latina student population. And I wrote a grant to get a class set of devices. So I just decided that I took a class. I was getting my master's. And so I took a class, a technology class. And after I took that class, I kind of kept going. And as a result of that, I joined our local ICE, our Illinois Computing Educators. This year was my first ISTE. So I went to ISTE, and then I began kind of meeting other educators who were using technology in a meaningful way. And I met Dr. Will.
Awesome. So let's begin by talking about the difference between a technology-enriched learning environment versus a blended learning environment. Will you speak to the differences between the two?
So, absolutely, we can talk about it. So as far as a technology-rich environment, I really would say, in my experience, it's been where technology is visible. And so visible as in students are using devices, even smart boards, where you come in the space and you know that it's physically there and you can see it. It can also be used kind of as a replacement for I was writing a paper and now I am typing a paper. So it's kind of there in the environment. And a lot of times for efficiency. So I can do something a little bit quicker using technology. When we talk about blended learning, we're talking about a kind of a different setup. So we're looking at spatial differences. So students are learning in a physical space, which could be a classroom. It could be, in a physical brick and mortar building, as well as in a flexible space. And so that flexible space could be your home. It could be a flexible space in a classroom, kind of a different setup. So spatially, it's a little bit different. Also, students are working in different capacities. So they're working independently. They could be working collaboratively in teams. They could be working with the teacher. So there's spatial difference. There's kind of how they're working as a difference. And then as far as pacing is concerned, there's that element of like moving kind of at your own pace, or even at a pace set by the teacher. So if a kid is not moving, we don't put them in front of a computer and expect that they'll just be able to kind of just go with the flow. You're still monitoring them as a teacher. And students are not always working statically. So I'll give a practical example. In the school district I'm at right now, we just went one-to-one. And so the kids are just now, literally yesterday, we got an email, please make sure the kids have bags for these Chromebooks so they don't get messed up. But you can go into a classroom and all the students will be kind of working on a paper at the same time. And so with blended learning, they don't have to be working on the same thing at the same time. They could be working on kind of in different capacities.
So one of the first things we noticed after going one-to-one, and as we continue to work with teachers, is the need to coach our teachers through the transition to going digital. How should schools approach the mental and emotional shift that takes place when going from a traditional classroom setting to a blended learning environment?
So that's a huge question. And there are so many different answers for that. So I'll just give you a couple of things that I think are important considerations. One of the first things is really finding the correlation between what they already do. So there are teachers, fantastic teachers, that are already creating meaningful spaces within their classroom. They're already taking into consideration the pacing that's going on. They're already doing a lot of these things, and so it should not be looked at as this is a brand new thing that I'm doing. It's part of really solid instructional practices. So its basis is rooted in that. So that's kind of a good starting point. As far as admin is concerned and tiers and levels of implementation, I would say that teachers, much like students, are going to need different levels of support. And so there should be an understanding from admin and coaches that we can't just go in with kind of a one-size-fits-all and say, okay, I've given you this training, now kind of run with it. Teachers have their own comfort level, and there should be a space where teachers can express their concerns with the twist. And so I'm all about challenge and solution. So if we identify challenges, we should be identifying relational solutions. This is the solution right now. Going forward, how would that solution look a little bit different? So having kind of a future mindset of how we're going to address the concerns of teachers. And I also think rationale is important. Research is one of those things that sometimes we get as teachers, and sometimes we get the rationale that we need. But I think it's important for teachers to be in spaces where we're saying, why do we have to do this thing? Why is it important? And in that digging, they'll be able to uncover the research that's telling us how students have changed in the way of how their brains kind of function, and their receptiveness to all the different stimuli that are going around. And more importantly, their ability to step out into a workforce, their ability to be entrepreneurs and create their own businesses and compete globally is very much going to be connected to their proficiency and their comfort level. And not just that, but their ability to not only use tools, but to use them in dynamic ways. And they won't be able to do that unless we as educators create the type of spaces that they need. So the rationale is really student need. It's not that we want to do this cool thing and we really love technology. It's really based on student need.
And it's interesting that you gave that explanation and you spoke about the relational why. I am of the belief my check doesn't bounce every month, right? The district pays me. So when the district says we are buying this and they say, Will, we want you to work with teachers with this.
Sure.
I don't need a why. My why hits my paycheck every month. So as much as I believe in the work that we do, and I want teachers to gravitate to this change, because when I talk to teachers, I'll tell them, look, my number one job is to remove technology as an impediment for you becoming the innovator in your class. So that's what I tell them, and I try to work with them, and I want to coach them up. But it's interesting, again, when you say, hey, we want to do this, you want to do that, and all the cool reasons. But sometimes I wonder, as a professional, and we do think of teachers as professional class of individuals, why is important when you get a check in health insurance. Like, this is a job. You're not showing up, every day because you're volunteering, you're getting a check. So when it comes to you, I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yes, you are making sense.
Okay.
So all of that is very, very valid. I am a coach, and as a coach, it is my my mission to balance the needs of the administrators and the not just the demands and the mandates, but to balance how I deal with teachers as learners themselves. And in that coaching, I have to consider what their individual needs are, and not just their individual needs, but challenging them and pushing them and saying, hey, where is your, and this is where we kind of peel back that pedagogy, that disposition. So is it that you are a person that really is uncomfortable taking risks? Is it that you don't use technology in your daily life, as in, like, some people still have flip phones? What are the, I need to be able to get down to what those challenges are so that we can start kind of building bridges, because teachers can be compliant, and in their compliance, they can create a static, and for our children, that means not just a static environment, but an environment where they're not excited, they're not motivated, they're not engaged, because the teachers have not bought into the why. And so the rationale, I know when I was a kid, so I'm one out of 8 kids, and I come from a very traditional family. And so my mother and father, raised us, and we sat down, we ate dinner every single day together and all of that. And my father would say, because I said so. And that was it. And that was fine. However, when I left my household and I began to make my own money and all of that kind of thing, in terms of sticking and pushing and developing a culture at a school, because technology should be woven into the vision and culture of a school. And if we do not hit that rationale and really continue to provide those opportunities for growth and professional development for our teachers, then all of the growth that you do, guess what? When you're not looking, they're still going to get that paycheck. They can still make it look like they're doing the job that you told them to do, which was to integrate technology, and let's use these blended models. We use Schoology here. And so we can see how long you've been on the platform and how you're using it. But when we come into those classrooms and we don't see all of the fantastic things that we desire to see, it's because there has been no teacher buy-in. So that's the why.
I hear you. And I guess, for me, and I love coaching up my teachers, and I enjoy working with them. And, when we talk to them, and especially myself, I'll say, hey, this is how this thing is going down. And technology is changing the world at a rate that we haven't seen in a very long time. And there's no Blockbuster. And I never really thought about it in that way until, I saw Tom Murray give a keynote, and he was talking about, hey, and he had shown this video where people were actually going into Blockbuster as though it was some sort of historic museum.
Sure.
Like people used to rent videos.
Yes.
And so when I see that, and we talk about how this is changing, how students are changing, how they're learning, I want teachers as professionals to understand the shift that is happening, regardless of your administrator, because let's be real, there are plenty of schools where they have people like you and I in our positions, and we're working with teachers, and admin does absolutely nothing.
Surely.
So I'm not talking about my school people, but I'm talking about the admin sends out an email or in a faculty meeting, I want you to do this, and then they walk away.
Sure.
All right. So they don't monitor. They don't probe. They don't ask questions when they observe. They're not asking kids, well, hey, what are you doing? And when that happens, because, you know, you and I can only do so much when working with teachers.
Sure.
They themselves have to say, this thing is changing. I need to change as well.
Sure.
Right. So I say this to say, you know, in this one-to-one environment, which is completely different from, I have 2 or 3 devices in my classroom. What do you say to teachers who say, Elissa, I'm already a good teacher, Elissa. Okay. Have you seen my test scores? I'm tearing this thing up. Look at that. National Teacher of the Year. I'm doing it.
Yes.
Why should I use Schoology? Why should I blend my classroom? What I'm doing already is working.
Yes.
What do you say to that teacher?
So I would say that we have seen historically what happens when schools and countries use a model that does not change with the needs of the for the students, and not just the students, but globally. And so what happens is that you're doing this thing very, very well, and then you'll eventually see that there is a gap, and you'll look back and say, oh my goodness, I am at this place and the needs of my students are here, and I'm really not sure where that gap has taken place. So we're not talking about you as a teacher. We're talking about your ability to meet the needs of students and to prepare them for the world that they're going out into. And so if we're not preparing them to be able to collaborate in new ways, to be able to embrace not just, you know, paper and pencil revision, but for example, my students, I used to do Socratic seminars all the time. And one of the colleagues that I met through ISTE introduced me to global Socratic seminars. And so when I think about, my goodness, when they go out into this workforce, when they go into this university, and they're being expected to sit at the table and to have dialogue and to form professional partnerships in a way that we have not seen before at this kind of level. And so it was where people who made lots of money or people had access to lots of resources had the ability to be connected in dynamic ways. Not so much. Our children can access this same type of situation. And so we are really doing them beyond a disservice. We're setting them up not being able to have these skills in a way where they are comfortable, and not just comfortable, where they themselves are saying, let me re-examine what I'm doing. What is this programming that I'm going to be needing? How can I facilitate these relationships? How can I build in new ways? You cannot be teaching students those type of skills with the tools that you have right now. And I'm a teacher who, absolutely, my students grew more than they'd ever grown in the last school district. I just changed a couple of months ago, than they ever had in the school's history. So I'm definitely one of those teachers that is, I like the evidence of what I'm doing. But I would definitely say that for teachers. And then I would say, examine yourself and ask yourself, as a professional, is this the space that I am willing to embrace learning as my students are learning? And that's kind of a different question, because we throw around that phrase, lifelong learners, all of that. But really, teachers, if you're a coach, and I know you see it all the time, because I see it when I come into a room and I'm talking to my teachers or I'm coaching them, there are different levels of resistance. And it's almost as if the mindset is that I have reached this plateau, and I've truly capped my learning. And so you have to have a mindset that says, I want to learn just as my students learn. I can learn alongside my students. And that requires a little bit of mind shift and humility and appreciation for the differences that are out there.
Oh yeah, I actually had a teacher leave a training before he left, told me, why do I need to learn this? I'm already good. I'm great teacher, by the way. I don't need to get better. And him knowing that I could go into his class in Schoology and see everything he was doing. And he said, I don't want anybody in my room. You know, I don't want anyone knowing what I'm doing. And that type of thinking concerned me, because now I come to the field of education outside of a traditional teacher program. And for me, my mindset has always been killer. Like if I was awesome today, can I be more awesome tomorrow? So it's never about, man, I had a great day, pat myself on the back and keep it moving. It's always about continuous growth. You know,
Sure.
Whether you call that lifelong learning, you call it the hustle, or I'm in the to run this thing. But for me, it's always about how can I personally, you know, get better. And so in talking to him, I was like, well, you know, LeBron James is awesome, but he still works at his game.
Yes.
You know, just because you've won a couple of championships doesn't mean you can't push yourself. So, you know, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something sometimes as educators, I don't know if that mindset is there, because it's one thing for you and I to come to them. It's one thing for the district to sort of mandate and bring in these consultants from the outside to say, hey, here's a new tool, here's a teaching methodology, here's a curriculum. But the teachers themselves have to have that mindset of, I want to get better as a professional, as an individual.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And no program can do it, because that's a mindset and internal drive.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, y'all. So, you know, let's get to the whole planning. Because, you know, a lot of teachers, you know, they when you first say, okay, we're going one-to-one, you know, devices are coming. Hey, ours did the same thing. Some folks freak out, right? They like, man, I've been doing this thing 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Oh, you see this filing cabinet right here? Man, I got all my lessons and units planned out for the whole year. I done had this thing right here for years. Oh, my bin? Have you looked into my bin? Oh, that's a golden right there. You can't just digitize all of that stuff. So now, you know, you have to create stuff. So at that point, how do teachers go about creating and planning and implementing blended learning in their classrooms? And what have you seen in terms of positive outcomes? Yeah.
So I think that the idea of planning has to shift to planning and collaborating and reflecting. And all of those have to be kind of cyclical. And so planning cannot be, I'm just going to plan. It is, you can team plan, you can partner plan and say, hey, what are the outcomes that I want to see? What are the skills, understandings, objectives, standards, all that good stuff. But really, all those things lead to what is the outcome? And in doing that, you have to assess yourself. So that file cabinet that you have, you can't reach in and get everything and just kind of pull things out. You have to be strategic and say, what can I get the most bang for my buck out of? So if I used a tool in my classroom, unless it was hitting 2 or 3 things, I wasn't going to use it, because I knew that time was of the essence. And so we have to be strategic about what we use, why we use it, and how can we use technology, in a meaningful way. And so what I mean by that is, for example, my students did blogging. And if I used a blogging tool, when I first started, I was using a program called KidBlock. I don't use them anymore, but I used to use them. And so one of the features that was that students could not see each other's work. And so I love that, because I would have a Socratic seminar, I would have the kids come in, and then I would ask them about their feedback, and they'd say, nobody else did the work. And then I would uncover all the different responses, and I would say, now let's look at each other's thinking, and let's have a discussion about why did you say this, and what was your thinking behind that, and do you see that there's a connection between what so-and-so thought, and then the people that didn't think that, what is your new understanding? And so those type of features were inherent in that program because I wanted to stimulate critical thinking. It wasn't just respond to a question, type it up on a blog. And so even thinking about the tools that we use, it's connected to the outcomes that we want. If I want my students to be able to think critically, that means they have to be able to synthesize lots of different ideas. They have to take other things into consideration, and they can't do that if they're just typing on typing in Word, or even typing in a Google Doc, unless you're using the Google Doc collaboratively. And so the same thing goes for planning, is that teachers have to begin to see it as, hey, what do we want our students to get out of this? And they also have to seek out models. So if you have a teacher who's killing it, see if you can record that teacher, another teacher in our district. That's a tool that we've been using recently. So I did a PD last week, actually not me individually, me and my partner Meredith did a PD, and we videotaped one of our sister schools, and we showed the videotape. It was 3 minutes. And so teachers need to see, if you're asking me to do this, what does this look like? What do these planning documents look like? What does it look like after you plan and they're actually doing the lessons? Is it something that's accessible to me, so that it doesn't seem like it's something that's staged? It's something that, people who've been doing it a million years, let's look at people who just started, and so we have to begin to think in different ways in terms of planning. And you can do it. You just have to decide, this is our focus. So if we're doing PLCs, or you guys do PLNs, right?
PLCs in this, yeah.
Learning networks.
Well, we do PLCs.
Yes. So that would be my response to teachers, is to say, hey, are you using these lessons because you're in your comfort zone? When was the last time that you looked at the effectiveness of what you're doing? So that would be my approach.
Awesome. So earlier you mentioned that you use Schoology, and we use it as well. So now that throws a whole new element into the ball game. So now we're not talking about, these little programs we bought, we're going to throw them in, let's say, a technology center. Now you're talking about teachers having the ability to actually create an online course as part of their blended learning. And that's something that I strive for and push for, because I look at a teacher, I go, hey, when you do it like this, if you have a student who's home for a long-term illness, you have a kid at the alternative school, your kids can take that course without you being there. For those students who are there, they're able to have this work and then go back and have resources to study and look back over to prepare for a test, or they just want to sort of review themselves. So I look at that as being the awesome piece. So when your district, you go one-to-one, you roll out the Chromebooks. Now it's like, Schoology.
Yes.
How were you able to get teachers to design those courses?
So we're still working on that. We're still working on that. We've loaded up curriculum mapping and a bunch of resources, and teachers have formed their classrooms, but they haven't, school-wide, we have a couple of people that are kind of tech savvy, but school-wide, they have not embraced that aspect. And so we're even looking at what are the possibilities that we can use this for, where I think it was last year was kind of like, let's learn more about this platform. But this year it's more so I'll give you an example. I co-teach with a teacher, and she used Google. And so she said, we can use a lot of the same components within Schoology. And so I'm in her classroom, and we have 2 simultaneous sessions going on where she is evaluating student work, I'm evaluating student work. We're both seeing the same thing. We're, putting our revisions in there, and we're kind of using it in a different way than just saying, oh, there's a resource on there. So when you say our teachers creating courses, we haven't gotten there yet. But that's exciting because we really haven't pulled down all of the different drawers and opportunities that Schoology or platforms like that can offer in the way of creating opportunities for students. So that would be like our next step.
Well, holler at your boy. Now I'm not free, but I'll be reasonable.
Thank you.
Because that's what we're doing, and we have some teachers who are doing some awesome things in terms of designing awesome lessons. Essential questions, instruction, independent practice. Having your guided practice in there, where collaborative, exit tickets, etc. So we have some wonderful teachers who are doing that, and then we still have those teachers that we are working with.
Yeah.
As well. Because, and I know it's different, because especially when, you've just been teaching a certain way, and then here comes the learning management system that does all of these things. And in the beginning, that first year, I remember I had a whole bunch of pushback, and then 9 weeks test came. And I'm at the high school where they don't have 30 kids. They got 120. 150 kids.
Sure.
And when that 9 weeks test got graded on its own, and they walked away like a boss.
Oh, yes.
I had their attention then.
Oh, yes.
All right. Now they were like,
oh, yes.
What else can I do?
Yes.
I said, come on, let's do this.
Yes.
So, that I was like, all right, we can roll with this.
Yes.
So that's one of the things I love about it. And then, I go on and on. Look, I'm not going to get up here and sell Schoology or sell my services. But like I said, I won't be free, but I will be.
Yes.
So holler at your boy. I can come to your school district and show y'all a lot of stuff that we've been doing. So now let's get to administrators. Some administrators, even though they bring all of this technology into their schools, they don't know technology.
Sure.
Outside of email, they don't deal with it much. When they're going to actually observe a teacher now in a blended learning environment, a one-to-one environment, how does that observation change? What exactly should they be looking for?
So I am non-evaluative, and because of that, I definitely wouldn't want to take on that hat. But what I would say is that prior to that evaluation, the administrators would have to have communicated clearly the type of interactions that they would like to see. Not kind of staged, but to say, hey, this is what engagement looks like within a blended learning environment. This is what are different kinds of lessons that we see. This is students demonstrating understanding using different modes, different mediums. And so teachers really have to understand that there should be evidence of that learning that's in there, and it should be built into the framework. So if you're using, Charlotte's or Marzano's, then there should be some technology standards, some ISTE standards, some connectedness in a different way that's already set up in terms of you knowing what they're looking for. And I would say, just as a coach, that those things should come in phases. And so we shouldn't be looking for 3 or 4 or 5 different things, that we should phase it out. So we should say, okay, in the first year, we're going to be looking for effective use in this way. And then the next year, we're going to be looking for this and this. And so therefore, we have a reasonable expectation, and we've already kind of laid out what our future goals are, so that teachers are not feeling as if there's unreasonable expectations, or they're kind of set up in a way. We always want to structure it in a way where we're challenging you, but yet we're giving you support, even before we get to the evaluations. Because again, it's about student learning, student growth.
This has been awesome conversation. You have been dropping gems. So I can't wait for people to start listening to this. So before we go, what is your call to action for those educators who are still very nervous and they find it difficult to lesson plan for a blended learning environment, particularly, what happened secondary level, and I try to bring to them a station rotation.
Sure.
Have some teachers are they work with that, because I look at that as being the best model to work with students, particularly students who, when you look at, do y'all take NWEA?
Yes, NWEA, definitely MAP. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we take it over here too. So when you are looking there and you got some kids who rich scores, let's say 178, and you got some over here at 330, you got a huge gap.
Sure.
And so for you to sit there and try to teach whole group, I don't know what you think you're doing.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Because you're not doing much when you have that sort of gap. So that's why I like the rotation, because you can actually put your students in groups according to RIT scores and really target students where they are and scaffold where you need to really grow them where you need to go.
Sure.
But at the secondary level, that's not so easy as opposed to elementary, because they're used to centers. So when you talk about the station rotation, they visually see it and can connect.
Sure. So I worked in secondary for 10 years, and I will tell you that we should be looking a lot at project-based learning. We should be looking at conceptual based learning. Next generation science standards integrate technology very, very well. And in terms of social studies, there's research that can be tied in, especially in the way of digital citizenship, and looking at how we evaluate sources and credibility. In terms of ELA, there's reflection and collaborative learning, and creating environments where this, as a teacher, you can have a conferring session, a virtual conferring session with students, where you can, give them feedback, and then give them slots where they're coming back up and kind of talking through their understanding. And so really it's about seeing what are the options that work very, very well for my content, in the way for high school teachers, because they're lovers of content, right? So if they're history teachers, oh my goodness, right? So really your approach has to deal with knowing who your learner is, knowing who your teacher is. At the elementary level, yes, we do stations very, very well. And so it can kind of fall into one of those lines. But yes, I would say considering content, what content area teachers already do.
Awesome, awesome. This has been such an awesome show. I'm glad I got you on this evening. This was people telling you, you're going to love this. I mean, you're not seeing this live. I left Google Hangouts alone, but it was free and it was terrible.
Yes.
So now I just say I got to pay for it now.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah, I got to get No, go ahead.
I really appreciate you. I'm going to go pick up my my little mama. I have a 3-year-old as my youngest, and I have an 18-year-old as well. And so I promised hubby that I would pick up my little mama. So I'm going to tell you that to have a wonderful night, and I appreciate everybody that's listening. And I appreciate you, Dr. Will. I am honored to be in a community with folks who share what they know, and they're always looking to improve themselves.
Awesome. And thank you again. So everyone, you know how I'm doing this. This is going on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube with the video casting on my blog. So as always, people, invest in you, EDU, peace.